Good morning. This is the January 18th, 2024 meeting of the Facilities and Infrastructure Committee. I'm Mike Lane, the chair for my last meeting as chair. Also, we have Greg Mezey and Lee Shurtleff and Randy Brown, and Susan Curry is joining us this morning too. Changes to the agenda. We've got to add two advisory appointments for the Air Services Board this morning. And for some reason, I talked to Jordan yesterday, the final print of the agenda didn't include the presentation we're going to have this morning from Ben Sanders from the Tompkins County Center for History and Culture. So I'm going to insert that, and Ben has another meeting, so I'm going to do it early for him. I'm going to do that right after public comment. Are there other changes? Do we have any comment from the public? Sure, we're all reading our 700 emails that we got, and left over from the, not having to do with this committee, but having to do with the legislature. That certainly is a record for ones I've ever received. Ben, why don't you come up and join us somewhere here?
Where's the best place to...
Anywhere where there's a microphone.
So for those of you who don't know me or who at least haven't seen me in person, I'm Ben Sandberg. I'm the director of the History Center, but I'm also the sort of operations manager on behalf of the county for the Tompkins Center for History and Culture on the Commons, which has, gosh, it seems to ever be growing, but officially we're home to 12 different nonprofits across the community, though there are certainly many more who make use of our space. And I think I was just asked to come and chat about sort of where we are with the building, how things are going. I know that I believe it was this committee and the full legislature, either in December or November, had voted on a tenant policy for accepting new tenants to the building. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. And then it's also important for me to give a shout out for our county facilities team. Alan and Dana and the rest of their crew have really been exceptional in collaborating with us to keep that building up and running. I think a lot of the changes they made this past year, we have seen a direct result in reduces in our utility bills. So where we projected from 2000, gosh, what year are we in? And what our utilities were in 2022 versus what they were last year, we were about 8.5, almost 9 grand under. And that's because of the improvements to things like the HVAC system and some of the electrical stuff that we are using way less than we had the previous year. And that has had a direct cost reduction. I know it has taken time from your facility guys, but they really did an incredible job. And the building is operating and moving a lot more smoothly because of their work. So that has been a really, exciting thing to see from my end. It means I get less comments or less, not critiques, but less requests from all of the other tenants in the buildings about things to handle, or this office is too cold, that office is too hot. I think over the last year, we've really seen a fuller return to pre-COVID operations. We are seeing more groups in the buildings than ever before, outside of our groups. So using our CAP gallery, holding receptions there, holding meetings and conferences. I know we hosted a couple of departments for the county for several conferences and planning sessions over this last fall. And so I really think that with the disruption of COVID notwithstanding, that we are closer to realizing the goal of, or the vision of the legislature that was here that initiated and propelled that initial campaign forward to bring that space to realization, 2015 through 2019. I know I had talked with Lisa and had pushed for this tenant policy that was voted on and approved not because we are at risk of losing any of our current tenants in our space. I think there might be a couple that I could see leaving in the next year to 3 or 4 years because they are growing and that we are like bursting at the seams in terms of office space and people in the building calling it home. And as a couple of the groups are adding some more employees, they might get to a point where they need to leave and we will have a vacancy. And, I think I'm a bit ignorant or naive on this, so I wasn't sure. Like there is a benefit that the county is providing to these nonprofits in the building. Because if we were forced to be in a private sector office space, that the rental that we would be charged would be higher than what their arrangement is in our building. And I didn't know if that had sort of legal consequences for the county of, conferring a benefit to one group but not to another group. And so, I think Lisa went and chatted with the legal counsel and sort of said that, okay, if we have this policy in place and there's this reason or clear articulation of when there is a vacancy, here's how we fill it, that's enough to cover, to take care or assuage that concern. So we were just out ahead of it a little bit. Again, nobody has given me any indication that they're leaving this year or the year after. Otherwise, I think some of the longer-term concerns for the building, the legislature does have a building improvement fund for the building that a little money gets socked into, so that in 20 years, I think there will need to be a roof overhaul at some point. That is sort of the thing on my mind and where we see some weaknesses, but that we won't be in a position where there's $0 for it, but it might just be needing to match some, state funds or that kind of stuff for money that we already have. And that I would say is really the biggest concern. We have some leaks in some places here or there. Usually they're pretty quick to be patched up and then they're all taken care of. So in total, the building is, it is at least three buildings that have been built together. And so some of the consequences of sort of remodeling and repurposing as opposed to demolition. We work within those consequences, but I think that preserving the architecture and the historic nature of those buildings, it was a good and valuable trade-off, but that does mean we have things like the occasional leak that we have to deal with. There are some upcoming funding opportunities this year and next year that I, as the History Center, will have access to that the county won't, because we can tap into the state capital funds for arts programs. And the county wouldn't be eligible in its own right. And so that is why also, gosh, this must have been in September, sometime this past year, I worked with Lisa and staff to extend the History Center's lease in that space to 10 years, and that was needed to make us eligible for those capital funds. Either you have to be the outright owner of the capital project that you're applying for, or a long-term leasee, and that 10-year mark, working with Lisa and the facility guys, makes us eligible to go get money to bring to the table for some of the, I would say, mid-range projects coming down the pipeline. Any questions about the building, partners, operations?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, can you mention about whatever the governance structure is?
Oh, sure.
And Is there a waiting list?
Yeah, I've got a waiting list, maybe a dozen long. I mean, and that is, I would say, really just formal groups who have asked, like, oh, can I get into the building? There are plenty of side-off conversations of, oh, you know, it would be interesting to us, what does it take? And I sort of explain that it's really waiting for somebody to leave. We are trying to work on some sharing initiatives, so I know we had an inquiry from someone that was just a single person of an entity looking for some downtown space in relation to the conference center. And there might be a way, and this really is just you know, we're at the outset of this, of them sharing desk space essentially with one of the other smaller groups. But that really is, that's sort of where we're at right now with the space in the building versus, I think, the demand of folks who would like to be part of what we have going on there. So that was waiting list. What was the other part of your question?
Oh, governance. How the governance structure works.
Yep. So the executive directors of all of the different nonprofits, and let's see if I can get them all. We have the Visitors Bureau and Convention Center. We have the CAP Art Gallery. We have the Dorothy Cotton Institute, Susan Christofferson Center, Center for Transformative Action, Discover Cayuga Lake, the History Center, Wharton Film Studio Museum, the Gaiaconal Learning Project, Cayuga Chamber Orchestra, and there's going to be one group that kills me for not mentioning them, but that...
That's pretty good. Got that many.
But the executive directors or an appointed representative of each of those organizations are part of the governance structure. We meet monthly on the second Wednesday of each month. Rich John has been the county legislature who has been coming to those meetings, and in additional to Rich, Nick Hemholt from the planning department has also been sort of a county staff position present in those meetings. Though I believe Rich is transitioning off that committee, and we might be getting somebody new from the legislature on as a regular participant in those meetings. And so we sort of collectively assess and make decisions. I would say the thing that has improved our lives most recently is we've overhauled the second floor, the Joe Mariani conference room, to now have a bunch of real nice hybrid remote equipment and infrastructure. And I think we're doing some of that with an eye towards that when that conference center opens up, we might be an auxiliary space that might be able to generate some income for the building to meet some of the needs for folks, and then combine that with the fact that we have the downtown visitor center, combine that with the museum and sort of the resources on what's available locally. We think we're going to be able to have a real nice collaboration that's going to be beneficial to our groups and to the building as a whole when that conference center comes online.
One other question I had was, do you want to talk about your organization, how the space works there for you?
Yeah.
What kind of reception you're getting from the community?
So I wear a lot of different hats, and definitely with the legislature, I'm never sure whether I'm wearing the History Center hat or the building manager hat for the TCHC.
They wear off the top of your head.
Well, goodness, I might have to preemptively shave then. It'll go quick. Yeah, so we're in the month of January, our exhibit hall is closed because we turn over exhibits. We've settled into a nice routine where we have our big major exhibit open at the beginning of February. That'll run through the end of December. We have lots of little pop-ups throughout the year, but we really just have the capacity for a total overhaul once a year. So we close down in January, and we're quickly gearing up for our next exhibit, which is called The Sporting Chance, on and off the field. And so it's looking at a local sports history of Tompkins County. We are very purposefully staying away from college athletics, and we're really honing in on, we're talking factory baseball teams. We're talking the suffragettes, the women's roller derby team. We're talking, we've got dragon boating, rutabaga curl, rowing. So we've got a lot of the things that, trying to show that sports have been an integral part of what it means to live in this community, even if you aren't, you know, Ivy League recruited scholarship athlete. And so we're really excited. We've got some cool narratives that have come out through this. I know we have lots of beats planned. One of our features is on the history of the Special Olympics here, so we're really excited for June coming up, when I believe this is the last year of the current contract that the Special Olympics will be here in Tompkins County. So we've got some fun stuff planned for that. But that's opening the first Friday as part of Downtown Gallery Night. So we'd love to see folks, but otherwise it will be up and running through the end of December. And, you know, this is my own little personal crusade, but that I really think that, like, no offense to all of us, we're great, but that my primary audience for the History Center is folks in 100 years, in 5, 6, 7 generations, because the core of our mission are all, you know, 500,000 plus pieces of history, whether that's, you know, the Tommy plane that's sitting on our exhibit floor, whether that's the diaries, journals, and photographs in our collections. A lot of stuff is now born digital. You know, if you look at all of the materials folks brought us from and during COVID, it's things like somebody snapped a photo of the shelves at Wegmans with everything gone, right? With the rush of toilet paper and household supplies. And they are donating that to us to save and preserve, but it never existed physically. It was a file, a picture someone took on their phone that then they emailed us. And so what does it mean to save that for somebody in 100 years? And this is the kind of question that institutions like ours are really grappling with right now, because so much of our collective shared experiences are now born digital, and they tell an important part of our shared history. And so, like, it's the work around the new materials we're bringing into the archives and the collections, and the upgrades we're making to ensure that they are available. Again, we're all great, but not available to us, but available to our descendants and those next generations, 5, 6, 7 lines down. And yeah, we'll have some challenges. I think as the History Center, our most pressing challenge is that we do need to identify and find new collection storage space. Yes?
I wanted to ask about the digital. There are a lot of digital repository software. There's a company like OCLC.
Yeah.
And is that something the History Center is looking at, or working with organizations? I know that on the state level, there is a digital repository for newspapers, but
yeah, so
I don't know what the History Center is looking at. I mean, I've wondered about all the digital, and you and I had a discussion about taking some of those things and making NFTs.
Yeah.
That was a really cool idea. So I'm just wondering what you're doing for digital repository.
So it's a two-pronged question, because for us, there is a distinction for things that we have digitized. So, you know, we've got some great Burley maps. Like, we've got a nice Burley map of sort of the bird's eye lithographs of Groton, right? We have this great map. We can make a digital copy of it, but that digital copy, from our perspective, is the same thing as a photocopy. Like, yes, it's valuable to share, to email, to hand off, but the thing that we are concerned with preserving is that physical map. However, if somebody had made that map in, I don't know, Adobe Illustrator, right? So that the thing that was given to us was the digital piece. That then all of a sudden we're talking about saving JPEGs and PNGs or PDFs or whatever. And so for the former, that digitization and access piece, we are in the middle of transitioning to a new collections management system that will have a cloud component of it, and that will also have a portal gallery platform for you all from your home computers to be able to look through the materials that are on there. And that is something we haven't had. We have sort of lists. We've got finding aids that'll say, we have the so-and-so collection. Box 1 has, a diary. Box 2 has private correspondence. Box 3 has this or that. So that transition, we are probably March, end of this first quarter is when we'll have the beginning of that portal up. But like I alluded to, with 500,000 plus pieces of history, it will be a years-long project to get everything we have up into that system. But we're excited for that first step. And then the preservation piece is we are working with some local tech support in setting up a couple of different layers of digital backup and digital preservation that isn't there to be interacted with. It's not there for the public to be able to go into, or there will be pretty strict parameters about how we can interact with it, because its sole purpose will be the continuation and the integrity of really what amounts to a collection of ones and zeros that become, that digital map of Groton, or that photograph of empty shelves at Wegmans, or the oral histories that we have that are all audio files, or all of the video that ends up coming to us. Right now, we're probably still in that first decade, so we maybe have, 5, 6 terabytes of storage. But eventually, let's keep fast forwarding, we're 50 years, 60 years down the line, 100 years down the line, our digital repositories will require some resources that I'm sure I'm not even aware of at this point, and will likely be a future Mezey problem. Yeah.
Other questions for Ben? Yeah, Randy.
Yeah, thank you for all the information. I wasn't here when all this happened, so is it technically the county owned the building?
Yes.
Yes.
It'd be great to get a tour.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Get that on the list. It'd also be good to see a list of all the tenants.
Yep.
and what the leases are and how much money we are or aren't making, and to see an overview of the expenses and to see how that all layers out. Are we covering our expenses, or it'd be nice just to understand that better.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you mentioned a reserve for, like a capital reserve. Is that in the History Center, or is that in the county?
That is county, so it is on your books, and I don't know much more about it.
So an update on understanding of that would be helpful as well. It is a nice building. Those terrazzo floors you could not replace.
No,
right?
absolutely not.
It cost you like $2 million, So so it really is. I've been there a couple times last year.
Awesome.
I really enjoyed going through there. My daughter really enjoys it too. So
cool.
Thank you.
Great.
Lee?
Own a baseball team in your sports?
That's part of the sports. Yes, absolutely.
Actually, one thing to add. One thing regarding sports.
Yeah.
Back in World War II, they were allowed town baseball teams.
Yeah.
But the Arnott Forest was a German concentration camp, and so various towns played the German soldiers.
Interesting.
And there is pictures and there is information on that. So I thought maybe.
I'll have to check with I always offer this caveat that I am not the director of the History Center because I know a lot of local history. It's because I've unabashedly ask for money so that I can pay the people to do the work. But I do know that the baseball piece we're pretty excited for, our jumping off point for that is tied around World War II. We were lucky to connect with, and now we call them ball boys. At the time, they were called mascots. The mascot for the Ithaca Colored Vets baseball team. So it was a bunch of black veterans who came back to Ithaca after World War II, and they started a baseball team as a way of sort of, building in within a community that had this shared war and veteran experience together. And it built off this legacy of factory teams and this local community teams that were throughout, maybe late 1800s 1800s through even to the 50s and 60s, in a way that doesn't exist really anymore. Like the way this the history of baseball unfolded and changed over time was, I think, a powerful example of how you can use something like sports as a lens into understanding our local history. And so, yes, there are lots of pieces to the baseball history here because it is so strong and prevalent. I think the earliest we have is we found a newspaper article, I think 1862 or 1863, that lists maybe 8 baseball teams. So this would be, some of the earliest baseball that would have come out of New York City. Now, I'm sure a baseball historian will tear apart the nuances of that statement, but in that we have a list of team names that we know nothing else about. There is no other information just beside their team names. So the Groton Mechanics was one of the teams listed. There's the Union Springs Frontenac, the Danby Rustics, the McLean Peculiars, it highlights that there is, I think a lot of times folks come into talking or thinking or working on history thinking that all that information is out there, right? I just have to look hard enough. And that's not true. We've lost so much about our past. It disappears, and there isn't a way to reconstitute or build it just because it wasn't saved and it wasn't preserved. And so here we have just a fragment of this specific history that these teams, we know that they existed and we know that they played, but we don't know any more about them. And so to start from that kernel, and then you get to a point where you have, the Corona factory team, or, the other dozen factory teams that littered our county, is, I don't know, it's a cool trajectory and evolution that reminds me why I get excited about this stuff.
Well, we look forward to seeing your exhibit. That ought to be fun.
Yeah.
Just for anyone who doesn't have the background here, if you look at your building, which is the 2 buildings on the Commons, the one on the right was the original Tompkins Trust Company building. The one on the left was the original county clerk building, which was built in 1866 by Tompkins County. It was financed by Ezra Cornell, who loaned the county the money. And it was held by the county, I think, until they built the main courthouse and things over there. So that would have been in the early 30s. So it's kind of neat that it came back. And the way it was funded was when the state expanded the casinos, and Del Lago and Tioga Downs were built in our section. Tompkins County received part of the licensing fees from those casinos, close to $2 million. And using that money, which was to us one-time found money, and also working with Trust Company, which owned the building, and they treated us very well as far as price was concerned. So we were able to purchase that, and there was a wonderful fundraising effort made to do the interior work. Over about $1.5 million, wasn't it, Ben, I think? 1.8 million. So we have, it is our newest building. It's also one of our oldest buildings. But it was not a huge drain on the taxpayer. And I think we can all be very proud of that and what's happening. Ben, I think this is the first time we've invited anyone from your facility over to bring us up to date on it, and we're glad you came today to help us learn more about it.
Well, I'll also get to extend then an invitation to come and visit, because I would love to give a tour, talk about the space, and share more about what we have going on.
That's great. He's going to be the new chair and of this committee, and maybe he can work to work with you to do something like that.
That'd be a good idea. Thanks.
Cool. Absolutely.
Thank you, Ben.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Let's go to Lisa.
Thank you, Mike. Just a brief report to update the committee that And I believe all legislators received an email stating that our Weights and Measures Division is going to be audited starting this Friday. There are audits through the Office of State Comptroller. There are 10 such audits happening across the state. It's a really good timing for us as we are under new leadership for that department with Heather Chappell as the new director. Jeff Smith as the director of Highway will be involved, myself, Norma, and Lori Scarrett through finance. So we're looking forward to that process, and our understanding is the audit's only going to be looking at our procedures, policies, and our measurement devices. So it's not going to be a full-blown audit. So we're looking forward to that to make sure that we're in alignment with where the state wants us to be. And other than that, I don't have any other news to report.
The comptroller regularly publishes these kinds of audits across the state, and they go in and look at different things for not-for-profits or for municipalities. Usually they have a lot of good advice and good practices. So I agree with you. I'm looking forward to seeing what they say. If they criticize us, we'll know what to fix.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Lisa. Katrina.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to update everybody on the office structure that we're going to be beginning work on Monday. They've already begun some of the pre-work facilities department has, but Monday and Tuesday, they will come in with the walls and put them up, and then next Friday, they will be here to do some finishing touches, and then ITS will make sure everything's hooked up and facilities will do all their final work. So next week. And I will just let you know that Friday they will be coming in and unhooking the copier for a couple days. So if you plan on coming in this weekend and printing anything or making any copies, I'm sorry, but the copier won't be available.
So bring your own copier.
Yes. And thank you, everybody, for support in that, getting that office done.
Y'all have all the phone hooked up and all of that?
They will eventually, but Taylor still is out, so we still have a little bit of extra time to get all the finishing touches, but we will have all the computers and the phone and everything hooked back up. The copier will be up and running next Wednesday.
Questions? Thank you. Let's go to the Highway Department. Jeff Smith can't be with us today because he's, I believe, in Albany at a he chairs the State Association of Highway Superintendents, I believe is the name of it. And so he's doing that out there. But he's given us a couple of resolutions, and Kevin McGuire's here, joined us, old friend who's back in a different role right today, but we're glad to have you, Kevin. And do you want to talk about either of these?
Thank you, Mike. Yes, thanks for the introduction. Glad to be back. I submitted these through the Minute Track system, and if I'd been a little more in practice, I probably would have asked that the order be inverted.
Well, we can do that.
Oh, fantastic.
Why don't we move Resolution B to start out with, authorizing an agreement for the implementation and funding of 100% of the costs of replacement of the Midline Road culvert over tributary to 6 Mile Creek, of which qualified costs may be reimbursed from Bridge New York funds. Greg has moved that, and Lee has seconded it. Now go ahead.
I believe these are fairly standard, although they were new to me. But this resolution authorizes us to enter into an agreement with the state, as the rather lengthy title indicates. You'll see also that the resolution itself is full of maybe more verbiage than we would normally pack into a resolution, but the state provides a template for what they need to see in our authorizing resolution. So when I put this together, I used materials that the project managers had specifically about the project, but then I made it conform to the rather dense structure that the state's template is in. So this is 100% of the costs are covered by Bridge New York, as long as we stay within the budgeted cost. It's not an insignificant amount of money, and it's I probably don't need to say too much more, but I'm happy to try to answer questions.
Well, these culverts have been in the works for quite a while, so we're glad to see them moving along. I think this is in my district, or it's either mine or Greg's, but it's right down there near the border.
Yeah, that there's a pronounced dip on Midline where you come down from, if you're coming from Caroline, you drop down into a dip, and then there's a big climb right there where the intersection with, I'm drawing a blank on the name of the road, but Irish Settlement, no. Anyway, 3 roads come together.
Yes.
Right near the edge of Greg's district. And that culvert has been on the list for a while. It's in the capital plan. You all appropriated funding for it. And this is just to cement the agreement with the state.
Ready to vote? Go ahead, Susan.
I have a question. I'm a new member to this, but I technically don't start till February. Do I vote today?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Next month you get to vote. We didn't have Deb come in. Deb was not feeling well today. So we can take a hand vote. All in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Resolution A is authorizing a contract with Erdman Anthony for design and right-of-way services for replacement of the Midline Road culvert over tributary to 6 Mile Creek, town of Dryden. Greg is moving that. Is there a second? Seconded by Randy. Anything else you would like to mention?
The reason I encouraged or suggested that I had got them out of order was because the one establishes the relationship with the state under which we then can contract for design services. And that's what this second one is about, authorizing us to get into a contract with the vendor that will provide the design services for the project.
Randy?
Yes, so basically the way this works is the county puts the money up front for this process, and then we apply to the state for reimbursement. Is that how it works?
That's exactly right.
Okay, thank you.
Ready to vote? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Kevin, anything else you'd like to bring to our attention?
I would just say that it's been interesting to be in the highway department. I always enjoyed my work with Jeff and Trish, but seeing the crews mobilizing around the recent inclement weather, and one of the things I'm doing right now is entering the data from their daily activity, so I get a real picture for the extent and breadth of both the snow and ice efforts that go on, as well as the ongoing other projects that, while they take a back seat to snow and ice, keep moving. And I've been impressed. It's great to join that operation and see more about it.
Well, we're glad to have you there.
Thank you very much.
I think we got more snow coming this weekend, so they'll be able to take care of that for us, I'm sure. Anything else on highway? Thank you very much, Kevin.
Thank you, Mike.
Welcome back.
Thanks.
Let's go to transportation planning. Who's going to bring this? Is it Fernando or Terry? Which I see them both up there.
It is me. So,
Go ahead, Terry.
yeah, I guess I'll give some context for this. So a couple years ago, I think it was in 2022, actually, the county put in a request with Senators Gillibrand and Schumer, a congressionally directed spending request for some funding, $128,000 to support the purchase of what are called EV ARCs. They're a self-contained EV charging solution that involves basically, maybe actually the easiest way for me to tell you is to maybe just show you a picture of it. So this is what it is right here. So it fits in a parking spot. It has a giant solar panel on top and a battery, and then it offers the ability to charge vehicles. And so it's not connected to the grid at all. It can be moved around. It's easily transported on a forklift. It can fold up. I'm not sure if they have any pictures of it folded up anywhere here, but provides emergency power. So we put in this request because as we grow our fleet and get more and more electric vehicles, the concern that folks have expressed is what happens if they're on. How are we going to be able to continue to charge our vehicles? And so this was one of the opportunities that actually Scott Doyle, who was formerly in our office, had identified early on as part of the process. And so we're looking for funding for it. They're pretty expensive. And so we went out to the senators, as I mentioned, to try and ask for some funding. And we found out last year that they had decided to grant us this funding in the 2023 budget. And it's taken until this point to go through all the rigmarole that comes with federal funding. And so we just received the grant award letter. And so once and if you approve this and accept the funds, we will be putting in a purchase order for them. And hopefully within 6 to 12 weeks, I'm told, we'll have these delivered, and we'll be ordering 3 of them, and we'll be placing 1 in the general vicinity of the airport, 1 over at the public safety building, and then the last one will either go downtown, maybe near DSS, or it'll go over at Bostwick Road to support our growing electric vehicle fleet there. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions? Terry, is this what they would call a rapid charging facility? I know they're slow chargers.
Unfortunately, these are still the slower charging. They won't charge as rapidly, but for us, we still mostly see them as being used to charge our vehicles overnight. One of the places I mentioned, public safety building, we have some issues there in terms of charging capacity, and we haven't been able to make upgrades to that building just because for a long time we didn't have a plan for the public safety building. And so this is how charge the vehicles there, because right now we're just not able to put in any type of really charging solution. So these aren't fast chargers. They'll still be there to be used mostly overnight for our fleet vehicles.
The locations you mentioned, probably there's a good number of parking spots, but I would be concerned, like downtown, if this took up a whole parking spot.
Yeah, and it's a conversation that I've had with facilities to a certain extent, and so we'll be making sure that wherever we put them, there will be ample parking. So as you mentioned, probably downtown would be the one concern, but we're getting more and more electric vehicles. If you look at, for instance, DSS, they have more vehicles than we have chargers, and we're trying to remedy that in the spring, but this would be a potential temporary fix on that. And similarly with assessment and some of those other folks, we're running into some infrastructure issues there as well. So this is a potential solution to some of that.
Randy, so look, we need to get this resolution on the there. You want to move it?
Yeah, I'll move the resolution.
Acceptance of Department of Energy funding for solar-powered electric vehicle charging system, seconded by Lee. Go ahead, Randy.
Yes, Terry, thank you. So this for county vehicles only?
Yeah, that's the plan right now. Under the current policy that we have right now, all of our charging stations are for fleet vehicles only. We could make them open to the public, for instance, and then just put bounds on it so that we would, have what we really need them for is for overnight, essentially. But during the day, we could open them up if there was that desire. But the locations that we're going to be putting them, like the public safety building, we're going to be using it for their 2 vehicles. At the air, more of a backup. that might be a potential place where we could open it up more for public. The nice thing about these is that, we're not hooked into the grid, so we're not buying electricity for them. We're getting electricity. So at that point, it's less of a concern whether you're charging folks for their use or not, which has been a concern previously.
Thank you. Is there any software or data that's collected as to how much energy is being produced and how often they're being used, that kind of thing?
Yep, it comes with a nice network structure around it where it'll tell us not only how much the solar panels are producing at any given point and in a day, as well as how much charge the battery has, and then it'll also show how much it's being used, essentially, and how much the battery is being depleted by and how often. So yeah, we'll be able to collect all that information, and I'll be happy to share it with folks as we collect it more and more.
Lee?
Terry, I might have zoned out. How many units is this going to purchase?
The hope is to buy 3 of them.
3 for 128,000.
More actually, because we have some cost share that's coming out of the Green Fleet Capital Fund. So they're pretty expensive units.
Okay, thanks.
Are we ready to vote? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Terry, what else?
That's all that I have on my end. I'll come to you in a future meeting to talk about more of our fleet and how that's going. I think I owe you all an update on the green fleet, so we'll look to do that probably in February or March.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fernando, did you want to talk to us this morning?
I don't have any items in the agenda proper. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
I will tell you, we had a meeting of the Transportation Council this week. There's a couple of projects I just want to let you know that were submitted for Transportation Alternatives Program funding. The applications went in last week. One is sidewalks in the village of Dryden to accommodate and serve a new housing project in the north end of the village along Route 13. And the second project that was submitted was to connect, provide better bike pedestrian connections between Boynton Middle School and the beginning of the Cayuga Waterfront Trail and its access to the Stewart Park. So those were 2 projects that, we should hear probably by the end of next spring, or by the end of spring this year, if they were selected or not.
Well,
otherwise, again, also just to let you know, verify that the bridge over the flood control channel, or the Black Diamond Trail, which was installed just recently, is open for use. Although it remains unfinished, there's still some work to be done on the approaches that will be done when we get the break in the weather. If there's any questions, happy to.
Fernando, I was trying to remember when they're going to do the Route 13 repaving, New York State. Is that this spring? Or is it a year from now?
It may happen this year. There's a chance that it might slip into 2025. It's a pretty complex project, and they're working on the design phases, and but it's imminent. What I think is going to happen, they're going to start the work this year and maybe wrap it up in 2025.
That we're talking the area of Route 13 down by the high school into the city, right?
It's, I believe it, actually, yes, it's the whole Route 13 is going to get repaved through the city. From the Aldermeyer Road, where the north side shopping center is, all the way to the northern boundary. It's going to be an in-depth, they call it 2R project. It's not just a repaving, a surface repaving. They're going to dig down. They're going to be redoing sidewalks. It's going to be Meadow and Fulton. And at this point, I don't know how many, but some of the, the east-west connectors, Court, Buffalo, Seneca, between Meadow and Fulton. So it's going to be a very significant project and very impactful, I'm sure.
When does that start? Well, we're trying. That's what we were just trying to figure out. And Fernando, I think, just said it may start this year, but it may go into next year.
Right.
Anything for Fernando? Late.
Yeah, something like that. Obviously, a lot of disruptions and implications to it. Who handles publicity on something like that? Is that a city-generated thing? Is it county?
I think it's the state, isn't it, Fernando?
Yes, this is a New York State DOT project, and they're responsible for public outreach and all. And of course, setting up any detours, the project schedule. I haven't heard what their plans are as far as traffic management, if they're gonna, they have a number of options from, closing one lane at a time to closing one street and making the other one two-way. I mean, it can get complex, but I haven't seen a final plan for the detours and how they're going to handle traffic flow during construction.
I remember
sure
last time they brought in big lights and did a lot of the work at night on that project.
I think
Great.
if they're smart, they'll do that again. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine that only gets increasingly more expensive as each year passes to bring in night crews. I understand that it's the state's responsibility to communicate this, but I do think that it would be in the best interest of both the city and the county to also be supportive in the communication of this. So if somehow that can stay on our radar, or again, Lisa, I would look to you to where the best way to be, because I think our residents and constituents aren't going to really care who's doing or paying for the project. It's still a major disruption in the city and then also in the county. So I would just encourage us to stay on top of that and be a partner in the communication efforts with the state.
And we can certainly keep that top of mind.
I'm just thinking about it from the ambulance driver standpoint. I went down through there a week or so ago on an emergency call, and just with a farmer's market, it's a nightmare sometimes trying to get through those corridors. I can't imagine what a lengthy project's going to do to us at certain times of the year, but that's the nature of the business. It has to be done.
Temporary inconvenience, permanent improvement, we hope.
There's the headline, Mike.
Okay. Anything else, Fernando?
No, and I'll make sure to keep everybody informed as I learn more details about this project.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think Roxanne is with us. Good morning, Roxanne.
Good morning. Sorry, I was out meeting somebody at the door. Happy New Year's, everybody. I'm here. I don't have anything on the agenda.
We've added the advisory appointments for the Air Services Board.
Yep.
And so we might want to take those. And is there anything you want to bring us up to date on before we take those?
Nope. So the two of them went before the ASB meeting in December. Both were approved to move forward with those. Things are moving forward here, working hard, working on the strategic plan with that group, getting information to them. They're hoping to come out here for a visit in the next month or so, which will be good, and meet with different individuals, which I'll be reaching out to people they want to meet with. So working on that, continuing to, work with the airlines, our current partners, as well as future partners on what we can do to increase service at Ithaca. Also really quick, Cheryl Dean, who worked for the county, worked for the airport for almost 10 years, retired at the end of December last year. So congratulations to her. She's enjoying time with her husband and grandchildren, so that's good for her. So we're working on filling a title here And we have applications that just came in this week, so I'm reviewing them and hoping to interview and get some help. So things are going to be a little busier for a while, but it's good.
Could you remind the committee her position was?
Account clerk typist?
Okay. So, did you have a question, Lee, or just smiling?
I was just going to tell Rocky that Cheryl is enjoying her retirement. Her husband now brings her to coffee with him.
Oh, we did a luncheon for her here, and her son Ryan came down. Ryan Dean, who is on News Channel 3 from Syracuse. So if you watch that in the morning, and it was pretty entertaining. We had some good laughs with them on stuff that Cheryl does. So yeah, and Josh apologized to Ronnie that now, you know, his to-do list is probably going to get even longer. So it was good. It was a good time while she was here. She was very helpful, very great with answering the phone and customer service. We greatly appreciated that. So I'll text her and thank her, Lee.
She's big into the grandchild thing now, so.
Absolutely.
Roxanne, one thing I did want to ask about a while back when we were talking about the use of the customs facility, you were working, I think, with CNS and others to kind of work on the overall income that was coming in from that, from the various areas. I wondered how we're doing with that.
It's going well. I have a call into Mike Horan again. Him and I are going to meet hopefully this week. He's been traveling and with everything with the holidays and, you know, with covering the duties that Cheryl did, it's been a little bit additional. So working on that and hoping to get information put together on the actual revenue associated with customs so we can make sure we're budgeting that correctly as well.
Any other questions for Roxanne? Let's move to the Air Services Board appointments. We have Kate Supran, Cornell University representative, apparently replacing Gary Stewart. And we have Jennifer Tavares from the Chamber. She's at-large member, and I think that's a continuation. Does anyone need an executive session to discuss either of these? Do you want to move them separately or together? You want to move it, Greg?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and move that, Mike.
Greg's our rep on the Air Services Board, too. Seconded by Lee. Discussion? Those in favor? That's unanimous.
Gary hasn't retired yet, has he?
I'm sorry?
Gary hasn't retired yet, has he? Or did he?
Yeah, he did.
Okay. Didn't realize it.
All right. Thanks very much, Roxanne.
Thank you.
I wanted to point out on the agendas, there's always been this item for me for transportation. I've always used it to try to bring us up to date on things I was aware of, including the ITCTC meetings. The reason that got added there a couple years ago was because we used to have a transportation committee, but previous chair decided not to continue that. So this was kind of put in here as a nod. I hoped we would continue that committee, but we didn't. So I just wanted to say that probably that doesn't have to be a part of every agenda. Lee, that'll be up to you, but doesn't mean we still can't talk about transportation issues.
Mike and I talked a little before the meeting about Mike's willingness to continue on with ITCTC, and I'm hoping you'll...
If the group wants me to, and we need an alternate, Randy's been the alternate, or whoever you want, the group wants to do.
But I would like to see that continued to...
All right, thank you. I would be willing to do that.
Thank you.
Let's take the minutes of December 14th. Greg moves. Is there a second? Seconded by Lee. Discussion about the minutes. All those in favor of the minutes? Any opposed? That's unanimous. I'm not aware that we need an executive session unless there's something on the real estate sale that we need to know about.
No updates
Okay.
as of yet. Thank you.
What else this morning, folks? Greg?
I guess, Mike, I just want to personally say thank you for your leadership on the committee this year. This was my first year on F&I, and to say that you're a wealth of knowledge is an understatement as it relates to a lot of things that involve infrastructure and the county. So appreciate your leadership. Excited for the changing of the guard in the budget committee, which I know is a heavy lift, and look forward to that process under your leadership as well. But thanks again for everything on this committee.
Thank you for those kind words. If I've been too slow on some of the issues, it's not for want of the best interest of the county. Let's put it that way. And I think we've had a wonderful committee. And Susan, I think you'll enjoy this committee when you come on. Let's adjourn. Thank you, Katrina.